Good afternoon, everybody. I'm calling the regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order for Thursday, November 1st, 2018. Ms. Vaughn, would you call roll, please?
Thank you. Chair Wiscombe?
Here.
Vice Chair Lodge?
Here.
Commissioner Campanella?
Here.
Commissioner Higgins?
Here.
Commissioner Jordan?
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Okay, we're going to go to agenda item number 2, preliminary matters. 2A, requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of X agenda items. Ms. DeBusk?
Chair Wiscombe, we have none.
Thank you. And how about 2B, announcements and appeals?
Yes, thank you. I would like to announce that 104 Jorgensen Lane, which was appealed to the City Council, has been scheduled for their December 4th hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to item 2C. I can't read my own writing. 2C. So we have review and consideration and action on the following draft Planning Commission minutes and resolutions. The first one is the minutes from October 4th, 2018, and you have in front of you some revisions to those minutes. And also there is C2, a PC resolution number 022-18 for 104 Jorgensen Lane. Would any of my fellow commissioners like these to be taken separately, or may we take them together? Anyone for separate? Okay, we can take them together. Give you all time to review them, and I entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
As amended.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Thompson, second by Commissioner Lodge, right?
Yes. Did that include the resolution, Commissioner? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the October 4th, 2018 minutes and the accompanying PC resolution for 104 Jorgensen Lane. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, just as clarification, we're referring to the revised ones that
Correct.
Ms. Vaughn distributed
Yes.
today,
Yes.
correct?
Those are the ones, we have revised minutes for both October 4th and October 18th in front of us. So those are the ones that the motion is referring to. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to the minutes for the, the October 18th, 2018 meeting. Again, these are revised minutes that you have in front of you, and I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I just have a correction.
Okay, one
Got
correction.
Some hard to believe the DUs and the UDs are mixed up. Crystal, it's on page 4 in my comments, and it's the last bullet where it says ADUs have spiked. I'm certain I said AUDs have spiked. Okay.
Noted. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, the last bullet, AUDs have spiked,
Yep.
but the bullet before that it does say accessory dwelling units, ADUs. So that's
It was
correct.
really a follow-on comment to that ADUs are going this way while AUDs have plateaued and or spiked and are coming down. Both of those comments, I think, were the same comment.
Okay, fine. So we've made that additional correction to the minutes along with the other revisions, and I would entertain a motion.
Move approval as amended.
Okay, Vice Chair Lodge moves approval as
Second.
amended, and Commissioner Thompson seconds that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I will be abstaining from these since I was not here. So that carries you with one abstention. Okay, so we're on to item 2D, and this is comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on this agenda. And due to the time constraints, everyone is limited to 2 minutes. I'd just like to make one special note. If you're here to speak on average unit size density incentive program in general, please speak now. If you're here to speak specifically about the mobile home park proposed amendment before us, then speak to item 3. So is anyone here to speak under general public comment? Okay. Did you fill out a slip, sir? Yes, I did. Okay. I'll find your slip. Are you also going to speak on mobile?
I can dovetail it in.
Okay, great. So you're speaking mainly on general, on the general program itself, or another item?
No, general program.
Okay, yeah. I didn't mean to imply that you could only speak on the general AUD program. You can speak on anything that's not on the agenda, but if you're here for the general AUD program, this is the time to speak. Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Go ahead.
I own a historic home in downtown, the R4 zone. And me and my neighbors are stakeholders in this experiment, the program AUD. Your experiment is flawed and heavily tilted towards large developments which change neighborhoods. Land values in Santa Barbara, I will argue, have gone up because of speculation. Simple math. Your program has made it so much worse for the organizations that were building affordable rental units in the city. Unintended consequence, I say own it, staff and decision makers. We were told the program was necessary to build rental housing that people that live here can afford. I've seen your charts and graphs, programs on occupancy numbers, but no real evidence that the goals are even close to being attained. We can and should do better. The phase 1 and 2, A, B, C, are a symptom of a program that is broken. But if the new premise of the program is the downtown's going to be the recipient of the lion's share of these developments, please remember that these are your historic resources. Neighborhoods are being substantially altered with no compensation to the community as we speak. Remember what the neighborhood loses: quality of life. You've heard my other comments about what we're actually losing. So please, my concerns are I have a future developments, a false sense that the mechanical parking is a solution, the idea of zone of benefit and bonus density. Where's the water coming from? Nobody talks about the trash that comes out of a demolition. It's hundreds of large trucks going to, I assume, the dump. We should minimize and account for these and try to limit the impact on our neighborhoods for the construction period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sheridan. Okay. Anyone else for general public comment? Okay. So, Ms. Gott, you can come forward. Let me...
And I actually submitted 2 slips. Someone's donated their time for me or to me.
Jim
Fareed.
Okay. He's back there. Okay. So you want 4 minutes? Okay.
Good afternoon, not City Council, Commissioners. I wanted to bring up 2 issues since I heard Mark talking about the AUD. The first is you guys are looking at actually intensifying the density of the downtown with no parking. You already have a proposed project at the Saks Fest that is supposedly going to be adding approximately 300 jobs from what I can understand. Can someone tell me where those people are going to park? And can someone tell me where they're going to live when we already have a housing crisis? Most of those people will probably not live in Santa Barbara, and they will actually be recruited to Santa Barbara. So that means that our housing situation is actually going to get worse, because we will have anywhere from 100 or more possibly housing units that are going to be needed here on the Central Coast. That's a scary proposition when the only housing we're actually being built is for the people that are earning anywhere from $127,000 to $154,000 a year and more, because that's primarily what is being built. And the reason we don't actually have a solution is because of Planning Commission and City Council. And we have 4 City Council people to thank for not making a decision regarding AUD. That is the mayor, Kathy Murillo. That is Eric Friedman, who was just elected. That is Greg Hart, who's going to be departing, and Randy Rouse, who will be ending his term this coming year. Those are the people who actually decided to punt any decisions on the AUD, and by doing that, they have screwed the residents of the city because they've got a date in the sand that will ensure that virtually all AUD units in the pipeline will never pay an impact fee, and they will never have inclusionary housing. So that means this approximately 900 to 1,000 units are going to be a drain on the city. They may help boost the property values a bit, but for the most part, they will displace residents and they will be a drain on the city, period. Did you know that the Mark has some short-term vacation rentals? If you didn't, I suggest you start taking a look at seeing at all the vacation rentals in the upper State Street. Did you know that it's become a part of a dorm, basically? That some of the residents that used to live at the Mark are now decamping from the Mark and moving into the Arlington because of the dorm-like atmosphere. Did you know that we have college students sleeping on balconies because they are so overcrowded in some of the apartments? That's what's happening to the Mark. And I wonder if a lot of the other AUD units that we are going to be building is going to be turning into dorms. Finally, I don't know if you watched City Council during public comment on Monday, but I made a comment about a situation that happened a few weeks ago. One of the members of Allied Neighborhood Association came to our meeting and told us about a story of a woman who took her young child, who can just crawl.
You need to wrap it up. Thanks.
To the park at Alex Keck Park. The baby did what a baby does, crawling around in the grass, picked up something, ate it, and was taken to the emergency room. They tested positive for marijuana, and the mother is now being investigated by Child Protective Services.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else for general public comment? Yes. Did you fill out a speaker slip?
Yes.
Okay, and your name, please?
Alejandra Melgoza. Just general.
Melgoza?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Melgoza.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Alejandra Melgoza, Santa Barbara community organizer with CAUSE. I'm here today because we have an urgent crisis on affordable housing in our community and have waited too long for action from our city leaders. Recent census data shows that Santa Barbara has lost over 9,000 Latino residents over the last 6 years. Over 1 in 5 members of our Latino community as a result of our housing crisis. Working families are being pushed out by rent increases and evictions and face a decade-long wait list for affordable housing or Section 8. Nearly 1 Latino family every week leaves the city of Santa Barbara. Every week, we see the price of inaction. The city created a housing task force which held 11 public hearings on the AUD program, putting forward recommendations like requiring inclusionary housing on new developments. The city paid for a 128-page feasibility study, which conducted a finding that it could require up to 15% of new developments to be affordable units. Nearly a year ago, the task force recommended at least 10% inclusionary housing and sent that recommendation to the council in February. The council chose not to take action and sent that task instead to you, the Planning Commission, to decide what the inclusionary housing requirement should be. It's now October. It's been over 8 months since the council asked you to decide on an inclusionary housing requirement for the AUD program. Over the past 8 months, hundreds of Latino residents who call Santa Barbara home have had to pack their bags and leave. Meanwhile, as proposals for new housing continue to come before you, nobody can require them to include any affordable units because of this missed opportunity. We urge you to put inclusionary housing on your next meeting agenda. We understand you have a work plan that includes many important issues, but this is urgent. We are losing our community block by block and losing our opportunities to house our community building by building. We cannot afford to wait any longer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone else for general public comment? Okay, seeing no one, I will close general public comment and we'll go to item number 3 on our agenda. It's a new item. This is the average unit size density incentive program amendments, phase 1A, and it's a recommendation to City Council of proposed zoning ordinance amendment to address existing mobile home parks. So we'll get a presentation from staff, and then we'll go to any commissioner questions. If you have specific questions, then we'll go to public comment. If you're here to speak, I have a lot of speaker slips. You'll get 2 minutes. And if you're not familiar with speaking, don't get nervous. There's a little timer up there on the podium, so you just go up to the podium and state your name and whatever you want to say, and you'll see the ticker go down for when your time is up. And if you exceed your time, I'll gently remind you that your time is up. So we appreciate you all coming. And then after public comment closes, it'll be back to the commission for discussion and action. Okay? Thank you. So Ms. Metzger, yep. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Would you introduce yourself? I probably should have had Ms. DeBusk introduce you, so please. Thank you.
Yes. Hello. My name is Jessica Metzger. I'm the project planner for the AUD incentive program, and I'll be giving the presentation today. So we are here today to present an amendment to the average unit size density incentive program, or AUD program, addressing existing mobile home parks and forwarding the Planning Commission's recommendation to the City Council. For some of you, the next slides may be review, but I'd like to give a quick background of the AUD program. The concept of the AUD program began with the adoption of the 2011 General Plan, which included policies to encourage smaller, more affordable renter and workforce units close to transit, commercial services, and recreational opportunities. The program establishes these smaller unit sizes while allowing the flexibility for larger units, which will help subsidize the cost of the entire project. The program ordinance encourages housing by implementing development incentives, including increased densities based on the average unit size and type. The smaller the average unit size for the project, the greater the density that is allowed. It also includes development incentives that reduce parking, setbacks, and open space standards. These ordinance incentives, adopted in 2013, are provided to assist in making the construction of additional residential units more possible in our city. In 2016, the decision makers realized that the program should be reviewed, and a task force was formed to see if certain aspects of the program were meeting the intent of the general plan policies. Based on 11 public meetings and a nexus study and economic feasibility study, the Housing Task Force brought forth recommended changes to the Council. In 2017 and earlier this year, the City Council then took some of those recommendations and directed staff to initiate ordinance amendments, and the process we're here today to show you. These amendments have been broken into separate, manageable parts. The amendments in process include requiring 2 parking spaces for AUD units with 3 or more bedrooms outside of the central business district, and prohibiting the conversion of AUD projects as residential to hotels or similar uses. And also what is before you today, which is to exclude the mobile home parks from the AUD map. The next amendments will include the major work efforts of considering higher densities and additional incentives in the Central Business District, revising the geographic boundaries of the AUD program, exploring adjustments to the AUD parking requirements, which could include additional parking requirements outside of the Central Business District, unbundling parking, parking maximums, and in-lieu fees, as well as requiring the AUD program projects to provide units at moderate income rental rates or pay an in-lieu fee. Due to the complexity of these issues, these actions will also have a much more in-depth public process. Staff will be going forward to City Council in December of this year to confirm these directions before commencing the public outreach process on them. In addition, another aspect of the program that will be reviewed is the AUD program ordinance trial period of 8 years or until 250 units are constructed in the high density or priority housing areas. Staff estimates that the 250 units may be constructed by late 2020. We will also be addressing this in the second phase of the amendments and talking to City Council about it in December. The item before you today is in regards to City Council's direction to staff to remove the 6 existing mobile home parks from the AUD program map. The approach of removing the mobile home parks from the map would not only be a zoning ordinance amendment, but the map also exists in the general plan, which would need to be amended as well to maintain conformity between the general plan and the zoning ordinance. Furthermore, if the AUD density was taken away from these properties, they would revert to the base density. This would result in a downzoning of the properties, which was not the intent of the direction received from City Council. Under the AUD program, they could get 27 units per acre, but under the base zone of residential multi-unit, the density for 1 acre would be 18 units. Additionally, the Housing and Community Development Department of the state implements laws in regards to having no net loss of density in the city without relocating that density somewhere else. If the city downsized these properties without transferring the density somewhere else, the housing element could be in jeopardy of being decertified. This map shows the 6 existing mobile home parks within the boundaries of the AUD program, shown in the colors here. The majority of the mobile home parks are on the east side neighborhood between Salinas and Voluntario, but there is also one near the top of De La Vina. The mobile home park housing type tends to be more affordable with lower rents than other traditional housing types in the area. The intent of the Council's direction can be carried forth without downzoning any of the properties by the approach of the amendments shown here. We suggest as staff to remove the AUD program incentive of reducing parking for any of the redevelopment of these existing mobile home parks and leave the base density at 27 units per acre. When we look at these mobile home parks, according to the Department of Housing and Community Development, which tracks the mobile home parks and the RV parks used as permanent residence, these 6 parks contain a total of 262 units. On this table, if you take a look at the yellow shown here, this is the on-the-ground conditions of the 262 units. The red shows what could be possible doing the straight mathematical calculation of 27 units per acre for the same parcels, which would equal 330 units. The 27 units per acre comes from the assumption that the unit size would be 905 square feet for the medium-high density residential. This does not take into account the environmental constraints that might exist on the site or other development standards that are site-specific, like setbacks, parking, or driveways. Looking at these parks with the existing conditions, you can see that the redevelopment of these areas would be constrained. The blue areas are the flood zones, and then the green areas inside those blue areas are the creek and special wildlife habitat areas. And the red is the buffer from the 101, which is 250 feet. In that 250 feet buffer, health risks are reduced by having specific project design criteria for site layout, vegetation screening, and interior air filtration. The Mission Creek has the setback of 25 feet from the green on the map, and then the Sycamore Creek, which is on the east side, has the general plan policies to support a 50-foot setback from it. Since the passage of the new zoning ordinance in 2017, besides the density incentive in the AUD program, parking is the only other incentive that really exists when comparing the residential multi-unit zone and the AUD program. This chart shows the differences, and staff is proposing to remove the parking incentive from the existing mobile home parks, so they would revert back to the parking that you see on the left of the slide. There are many general plan policies that look to supporting the proposed ordinance amendments before you today and are shown here, including housing opportunities to promote equal opportunities for extremely low, very low, moderate, middle income, special needs, and senior housing, and also to preserve and promote non-subsidized affordable rental housing, as well as to maintain the affordability of those units. To accomplish the objective of this amendment, text has been added, as shown here on the slide in the dark red, that the incentives of parking do not apply to existing mobile home parks within the AUD program boundary. This slide shows our process timeline for these amendments, barring any unforeseen issues. If we receive your recommendation today, we will be forwarding the action to City Council. At our next hearing will be to present the amendments to the Ordinance Committee on November 20th, with the other two amendments that you saw back in September. We anticipate the 3 amendments being adopted on January next year. Staff recommends that the action shown here be followed, and that concludes my presentation. And we are here to happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Metzger. We'll start with, this is questions only right now from the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Metzger, on that chart you had for the potential development, if you're just looking at number of units, there's really only one property that jumps out that could go crazy there, right? That's the way to read that chart from a count unit?
That is correct, and I can bring that chart back up.
I'm a bit perplexed that, because to me, as big an issue as that chart points out is also just a pure gentrification issue in terms of what's there on the ground and what can be charged and what it's affording to people now, versus if you just swapped 40 units for 40 units, those new 40 units would be much more expensive to be rented, correct? And is there nothing in your report or comments about that?
Can you rephrase that question? I'm sorry.
So if on that chart, if the other 5 properties, the according to your parameters, the development potential there was pretty much equal to what's there now versus what's there, what could be there at the 900 square foot per unit number. But the cost of those units, the rental cost of those units that would be developed, would be presume to be significantly higher than what's being rented there now. Would that be a correct statement?
Through the chair, Commissioners, so if the properties were redeveloped,
Correct. Gentrified.
they would most likely have a higher rent because it would be
Okay.
new construction.
I think this will be a recommendation that's going to council, and to me, that's an almost fatal omission in the commentary in the staff report. Maybe you're not trying to comment, and maybe that's my comment, but that would certainly seem to me to be as important as the numbers being compared to the numbers. I'm sorry to see you get up, Ms.
That's
Brett.
okay. I want to add a bit more, Madam Chair and Commissioner Jordan. You're right in that our staff report didn't speak to a lot of subjective issues that might occur with redevelopment of the mobile home parks. We were directed by City Council to reduce the incentive to redevelop them.
Okay.
And so this chart is, as Ms. Metzger said, just sheer numbers. Obviously doesn't take into account all the other constraints that go into development. And so we wanted to just show you by just simple math, by not downzoning the property, by keeping it at the 27 maximum dwelling units per acre, what that could result in terms of numbers, so that you weren't blindsided later or for whatever reason thinking that we hadn't said what that might mean.
Okay.
Because should the Planning Commission decide differently and want to recommend differently, those numbers would obviously change.
I'll take that advice to make those comments later then. Then my other question had to do with your paragraph on public outreach, and I can't really ascertain there that you actually outreach to the 6 parcel owners. Did we not directly?
Through the chair, Commissioner, yes, the parcel owners and all of the mobile home tenants, as represented, I believe, in the audience, were notified of this, as well as all of the neighbors within 300 feet of the parcel, the bigger mobile home park
Okay.
parcel.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jordan. Vice Chair Lodge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really getting complicated. With the state law, I want to see if I understand this correctly. If the city was to take a step that reduced the density of the zoning, there would then have to be an upzoning someplace else in the city?
Through the chair, Commissioner Lodge, that is correct. So what the no net loss says is that if you decrease the density on one parcel, you have to capture that lost density in another part of the city, or we would risk the decertification of our housing element.
Okay, and so it sounds like we should be very careful. We're not doing it in this case, but if we did, we could then use that credit, as it were, or deficit, to against any increase in density, like along State Street in the downtown core, which is being considered.
So through the chair, Commissioner Lodge, I don't think that that is actually correct. You don't get to bank density. It's just about the no net loss of the density. They don't talk about in the law if you change density, getting to move that somewhere else, the larger density. Is that what your question is?
So it sounds, well, I'm confused.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge, the no net loss housing statute, Ms. Metzger is correct in that if you make any legislative action or quasi-judicial action that alters the residential density of a site, you have to make a mitigating or replacement increase of residential density elsewhere in order to maintain no net loss of the potential housing units within the city. I do believe that you could consider actions regarding State Street, where if you were to upzone or create more housing opportunities that don't exist now. However, State Street already has zoning that allows for multifamily residential housing already. It doesn't have the AUD availability at this time, but I could conceive of a plan or a proposal whereby altering the AUD map, increasing the density allowed in certain areas of the downtown that are not currently part of the map, could afford opportunities to reduce the residential density elsewhere currently on the map and still maintain the net housing.
Okay, does that have to happen at the same time?
It has to happen relatively close in time. The statute requires any action that reduces residential density on a site, that action to increase the residential density in another location, I believe has to happen within 180 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Next on my list, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I have a question for staff, probably Mr. Vincent. I learned the hard way several years ago, as I think we all did, that state HCD controls mobile home parks, almost every aspect of it, and overrules anything to do with city zoning on mobile home parks. This allowed the Sycamore Creek so-called mobile home park to be built with non-mobile mobile homes. Those are not in any way mobile. They were trucked to the site and installed on raised concrete foundations and construction finished on site. It also allowed them to ignore the setback from Sycamore Creek and ignore the health and safety setback from Highway 101, as you can see in the map right there. So how does this proposal play with state law when we go forward with this, since apparently the state HCD controls all aspects of the mobile home parks anyway?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Thompson, the proposal before the Planning Commission today is to remove some of the AUD incentives that might make the conversion of these existing mobile home parks more attractive to the owner of the park. That is the underlying purpose of the action before you today. If these mobile home parks remain mobile home parks, all of the experiences that you just described regarding the Sycamore Creek mobile home park could occur within HCD's jurisdiction.
It was my understanding that if a property owner wanted to convert a mobile home park, state HCD got involved with it. Is that not true? To prevent it, in other words.
The conversion of mobile home parks to other uses are regulated by the Subdivision Map Act and by local ordinance. The City Council Ordinance Committee did hear draft proposals from Mr. Kalan on September 28th that for amendments to the city's mobile home park conversion ordinance. And so that we've got a lot of things going on right now. And so
it's because you're bailing out, I think, isn't it?
I don't consider myself indispensable. But Mr. Kalan is working on that aspect. Ms. Ostringer is working on this part and the other portions of the AUD amendments phase 1, and phase 2 will be coming along following phase 1.
So what you're saying is if what Mr. Kalan is working on right now, separately from this, and goes through, that we'll be able to preserve some control over the city mobile home parks and protect it from HCD jumping in and telling us what we can do?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Thompson, yes, if you looked at the proposal that was presented to the Ordinance Committee, it largely involved provisions that would require documentation of the financial and environmental effects of such a conversion, particularly the economic effects on the coach owners who rent in these existing sites, and would require mitigating payments to such coach owners or relocation assistance. All of that, I don't think I need to tell you, means money. and that would affect the viability of a conversion and the attractiveness of such a
But
conversion.
the state wouldn't step in to nullify it, is what you're saying?
These are provisions that are common in other local jurisdictions, and the Subdivision Map Act it allows for the conversion of mobile home parks. So the provisions that he presented to the Ordinance Committee have been effective in other communities.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Schwartz, you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Thompson asked a question that was on my mind, and Mr. Vincent, I think I still may need a bit more clarification from you. When I look at the proposed amendment language, this is slide 15, I believe, that Ms. Metzger provided to us. If any of these current mobile home park properties, if any of them are converted, allowed to be converted and are converted to something other than a mobile home park, and again looking at this language in this slide, I'm reading this, but I need your help in understanding the implications. Should the property be redeveloped to something other than a mobile home park act, would the proposed amendments before us today lock us in to not reconsidering any other development standards or incentives on these properties that could possibly no longer be mobile home parks? And again, I'm going back to the slide. If we look at the slide, and you see how it says here, the additional development incentives provided in this section shall not be applicable to any parcel that was developed. But, so let's pause, and I'll come back to try to rephrase my question. If any of these properties are redeveloped to something other than a mobile home park, if this amendment is approved, would this lock us into not being able to reconsider any other development standards or incentives out of a decision today or by the council?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Schwartz, the way I read the proposed amendment, I'm reading it, interpreting it, that the incentives offered to properties that are being developed under the average unit size density incentive program are not available. Those incentives would not be available to these 6 discrete sites because they were developed as mobile home parks as of November 1st, 2018.
Okay, so regardless of future development or until such time as a future city council might decide to revisit this amendment.
Correct.
Right, and change the development standards, zoning, incentives at some other time.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. That helps. And then to Ms. Metzger, I wanted to ask you about slide 6. I think it was on slide 6, and we've heard this before from staff recently, that the phase 2 and inclusionary aspects of potential additional amendments to the AUD ordinance require additional public outreach. Robust, significant, I don't know how we should describe that. So my question is that's now come up again. You've said that again today, staff has. So if that's the case, I guess my question is, why move ahead with a December 4th hearing at council without robust public comment outreach prior to, if the public outreach would inform the council further?
Through the chair, Commissioner Schwartz, what we're doing on the 4th is just reconfirming that all of these actions are something that the council wants to move forward with. We're doing that because there are new council members who weren't originally there when these directions were given. And we don't want to waste the staff resources of going out and having a public process, workshops, night meetings, things like that, if it's something that's not in the purview of council's wanting now.
Okay, I'll come back with comments on that. Then my other question is on the way the list of incentives are differently described or identified. Just so we're all clear and working from the same list, which I've asked, for before. Ms. Brooke has heard me ask for this. So let me just identify as an example. In our agenda item, it's described as reduced setbacks, reduced parking, reduced open yard requirements, as this is in conjunction with section 30.150.090. We go to the staff report on the first page. This is consistent: parking, setbacks, open space. But now when I compare that list, so I'll say 3 areas, 3 development descriptions. When I go back to the September 13th, 2018 Planning Commission report from staff, there are 2 more items in this list that are development incentives. So we have parking, check. We have setbacks, check. We have open space, check. But we also have building height and distance between buildings. So my question to staff is, and I really think this is important. I know you might think this is a deep dive, but when all of this goes back to council, we need to have continuity and alignment. So what happened to the building height and distance between buildings between the September 13th staff report and what we have before us today, and that will ultimately go forward to council?
Yes, through the chair, Commissioner Schwartz. What we're looking at today is just in regards to the residential multi-unit, and we did not also include the incentives that might be for other zoning or other land use districts. Like commercial has the differences in height, but it's not being reviewed today. So we specified it for just the residential multi-unit.
So even though, and then let me wrap up with this question to make sure I'm clear in my education, the September 13th staff report that is specifically about AUD and that mentions these 5 development standard incentives associated with AUD are not applicable. All 5, two of the 5 that I just identified, are not applicable at all to the proposed ordinance amendments you're asking for us to review today.
Right, when reviewing the comparison of if it reverted back to the base zone versus the AUD program incentives.
Okay, I'll just say I think that would have been helpful to explain why this list of 5 is now reduced to 3. There was no explanation. I think that could be helpful. And then again, this going to council. I don't know if any of the council members are going to figure this out, because it takes, quite a bit of time going back and forth to different documents, and I'm not sure they will do that. But I think it would be helpful for you to lay it out very easily for them to make the connection and understand why one list didn't completely transfer to the mobile home park item.
Through the chair, duly noted. We'll make sure to do that.
Thank you so much. I think those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwartz. Commissioner Campanella?
Yep, thank you. Following up on that, as far as building height, a little bit confused. The AUD program did not have the ability to increase their height versus what was in the underlying zoning before we had the AUD program. Isn't that correct?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Campanella, could you please repeat the question?
Yes. We talked about building height being an incentive under the AUD program, if I heard the question correct. But the building height in zoning, in all zones that the AUD program is in, was already preset. That we didn't change building heights because of the AUD program, did we? Is that correct?
Correct. Not as part of the AUD program, but at that same time, there were other zoning ordinance amendments done. You might recall that prior to, I think it was 2013, there was a maximum building height of 60 feet in the commercial zones. That still exists, although the way it reads is that it's 45 feet for most buildings. You can only get up to 60 feet if you're a community benefit project. So that was the change. So the overall maximum height didn't change, but you have to cross a hurdle in order to get above 45 feet in the commercial zones. And what Ms. Metzger was referring to is that here today, we're talking about the residential multi-unit zones. The maximum is 45 feet regardless.
Okay, so I wanted to clear that up, that there was not an incentive for the program, okay, in this zone, okay. Are any of these mobile home parks ownership, or they're all rental with the underlying fee title of the land in the hands of the property owner?
through the chair, Commissioner Campanella, there are some parks that have parcelization of the actual mobile home, and they're owned by separate people.
Oh, okay.
And I can show you the map again if you want. You can see, I think you
Yeah,
see
if you can point those out.
Yeah, I think you can see it on the parcel lines. Let's see. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We don't have the parcels on here, just the streets. But we could prepare that for you and bring it back.
So I guess my point is, if we have ownership, that's in form of condominium, is that correct? Would that be the legal name of what the park is? It's if people own their individual spaces, it's some type of condominium association?
Yes, that would be likely.
So as far as how would that be forced to change to an AUD program unless the members or owners wanted to do it?
Through the chair, Commissioner Campanella, some developer would have to come in and buy each individual parcel along with the major underlying parcel.
Okay, and I presume there would be CC&Rs if these are individual properties, which would require a vote of a supermajority or two-thirds, some type of majority to enter negotiations.
I'm not sure what the CC&Rs for these parks look like.
Well, I guess the question, Mr. Vincent, we're under the impression that somebody's going to come in, swoop in, talk to the owner of a rental park, and all of a sudden it could be gone. But it's more complicated, and it's voluntary on the part of the residents if, in fact, it's an ownership project. Am I correct?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Campanella, the voting, how the voting occurs for the conversion of an existing mobile home park is largely regulated by the Subdivision Map Act. Again, you're correct that it would be a voluntary action on the part. It would have in the parks where coach owners also own their underlying lots. It would require more coordination and would require a vote of the individual owners. I guess the point I would make in today's proposal is that the staff recommendation to the Planning Commission would not facilitate that conversion any further. So I'm not sure. It's not affecting that decision process. I guess I would maybe I ask a clarifying question of you. Is your question concerning that somehow this action will frustrate the voluntary intent of the owners of a mobile home park that currently exists in an ownership structure, and you want to not frustrate that? Is that the...
I will say that's my question, except for your last phrase. I don't want to frustrate that. That's an opinion that I don't want to give. I'm just trying to say I'm under the impression that we were talking about rentals and lower income people. But
Correct.
If we have ownership, is that a different set of rules or considerations we should have if we are frustrating the rights of owners to make a decision to sell their property?
Fair enough. I would say, and my answer to the commission to the question would be that's probably something that you might ask the members of the public who are here, if any of them live in such a park, if any of them own their lot, to speak to that issue as to whether or not they have any desire for a conversion.
Okay. Let's go on then. We were talking about 27 units an acre would be the AUD. Up to 27 units an acre is the zoning here under the AUD program, and that's similar to the underlying. Is that similar to what would be allowed, 27 units an acre previously, or only base density? With this previously would have, before AUD, this zoning would have been allowable for variable. Is that what we're referring to, or base density?
Through the chair, Commissioner Campanella, the 18 units per acre is the base density for the multi-unit residential.
Okay, not variable. This is base.
And variable was based on number of bedrooms, so it's not an easy calculation to do without having a project kind of in front of you to look at.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Campanella, just to clarify, with variable density, you get a greater number of units based on how many bedrooms are associated with the unit. So if you do have studio units, the maximum density you can get is 27 units an acre. So that was the case prior to AUD. And if AUD goes away, it would revert back to variable density.
This site would also refer back to variable density. Is that correct?
Well, AUD would sunset after the 8 years or 250 units in those areas.
And this would be variable?
Correct.
Up to 27 units an acre for studios?
Correct.
Okay. So if I looked at the parking chart, if someone were to make a proposal for studios, and let me say for the moment for sale, whether it's currently a subdivision or a rental project, they would have to park, if there's a proposal for 40 units as an example, all studios at 1 1/4 spaces, they'd have to provide 50 spaces plus 5 spaces for guests, one for 8 units. Is that about right?
That's correct.
Okay. So this is a multifamily area. It's not a commercial area, correct? So under the AUD, aren't the parking requirements for sale under AUD the same as the underlying zoning requirement at 1 1/4 for sale, not rent, but for sale?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Campanella, the AUD program has a blanket 1 space per unit parking requirement, whether it's rental or ownership. So that was intentional by City Council to incentivize AUD development.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm confused a little bit because there are certain AUD areas where the parking that's required for a for sale project is the same as would be required under the underlying zoning. In some areas, Upper State Street, for example, isn't that correct? Okay. As an example.
Ms. Tabuska is indicating the former SD2 overlay. I think it's the Upper State Street overlay now does require additional parking for ownership units.
For ownership. And this area does not require, whether you're AUD or not, if it's for sale, you can apply the AUD parking. You don't have to apply the zoning that required the parking before AUD went into effect on a for sale project.
The exception may be the De La Vina property. We can look at the map and let you know.
Okay. What I was trying to get at, it was if you had to park 1 1/4 cars anyway under the AUD program or not the AUD program, by taking out incentives on mobile home parks wouldn't really be a loss to the individual. He wouldn't be in a worse position than he would have been anyway, because the AUD parking could have been the same as the variable density. So, but you're saying it's not. And then setbacks, open space in the zone for sale, that's the same as AUD, or is that more restrictive, AUD rental, or is it more restrictive than AUD rental?
We're looking. The exceptions in that section of Title 30 for additional development incentives only differentiate the market rate ownership within the Upper State Street area. So those mobile home parks in the east side wouldn't be changed whether or not it was whether or not it was ownership versus rental. the one site could be the De La Vina site, which we'll look at.
Confused. I thought it was also applicable to R3, R4, and SD2. There's an old chart that I have, but maybe I'm mistaken.
So Title 30 did change some of the incentives. So initially there were incentives for distance between buildings, open yard, number of stories. Those items became applicable regardless of the AUD program with Title 30. So that might be some of the confusion. Some of those things are just part of the ordinance, whether or not it's AUD project.
Okay. So perhaps this is just my conclusion in my mind, if I understand it, is that going from a rental project to an AUD rental might be more attractive than going from an ownership to an AUD ownership for somebody who's trying to convert. That's just my perception, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'll let it go at that.
Are you, excuse me, are you about through with questions, Commissioner Campanella?
Thank
Okay, thank you. I see people leaving the room, and I really do want to give everyone a chance to speak here. I just had one quick question for Mr. Vincent, if I may. Excuse me, is there a proposal to reduce the setback from highways like 101 by the state? I've read things about it, but I don't know if it's had any traction or not. The buffers.
Madam Chair, I'm not aware of that, but I haven't been looking for that.
Okay, thank you. That it's not that big a deal. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to public comment. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. If you're here and you speak, excuse me, if you're here and you speak and you hear something that is exactly what you're going to say, you're welcome to come up and say, I agree with the previous speaker. So, and just be short about it. You'll each get 2 minutes, and I'll hold you to that. We have a lot of public speakers here. So when you come up to the mic, again, just introduce yourself, and you'll see the timer tick down, and you'll know when your time is up. So I saw that Lindsay Baker left. I don't think she's in the room anymore. So, but we did receive a letter from the League of Women Voters. So I'll be speaking on behalf of the League. Oh, you're going to speak on behalf of Lindsay? Yes. On behalf of Ms. Baker? On behalf of the League, yes. Oh, okay. Okay, so you were both? She had to leave, so that's why. Okay, but you filled out a speaker slip? I did. Okay, thank you so much for letting me know that. Okay, and then I have one here that's totally blank, so I don't know who that is. Okay, so our first speaker is Francisca Cadillo. Cadillo? Is it? No? Not here? Okay, we'll move on to Gloria Guess. Is Gloria Guess here? Okay. How about Silviano Guzman? Silviano Guzman? Ah. Do you don't? Oh, come on up. Huh? No, don't be shy. Sure, come on up and say what you want to say. That's great. And welcome. And don't be nervous. Just put the mic down to so we can hear you.
My
Great.
name is
Thank
Maria.
you.
Yeah, only coming for the motorhome. Only I need the fix. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I can't read this. Nanilia? Huh? coming up to speak? Yes. Your last name is?
Carmona.
Carmona. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. My concern is about the rent. I live in South Canada, and it's too high the rent. We are really poor people over there, and they don't fix it. Nothing. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Our next speaker, Francisco Garcia and Gina. Going to come up? I gather you're Gina Garcia, is that right?
Gina.
Yeah. Okay.
Gina.
Welcome.
Thank you. Nosotros, I want to say in Spanish.
Go ahead.
Nosotros estamos muy contentos ahí en ese lugar y nos gustaría que ese lugar estuviera mejor porque somos varias personas que somos personas trabajadoras y necesitamos vivir en ese lugar porque pues es el único lugar que nos alcanza, está al alcance de nuestro bolsillo. Y bueno, hay muchas personas que están pobres ahí y pues yo soy una de ellas y necesitamos que nos ayuden, por favor, que no nos quiten de ahí.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Dominguez is here.
Would
Welcome.
you like, hi, thank you. Would you like someone to translate that into
please.
English?
That would be great. I think
I could do it, but
a
to
lot of-
avoid any weirdness, I have invited Ana Rico, who's also bilingual.
Thank you, because I think we have some people that would like to speak but are much more comfortable in speaking in
Hi,
Spanish.
my
so-
name's Ana. I also want to speak, but I'll interpret it for her. Okay, Gina.
No, que estamos muy felices en ese lugar.
I'm very happy where I live.
Hay muchas personas que necesitamos ese lugar, somos muy pobres.
There's a lot of us who are poor, and we need this
Can you
place
put
to live.
the mic up to, yes, thank you. Okay.
Lo que sí necesitamos es que, pues, que nos los arreglen.
What they need the most out of this whole thing is someone to come and fix where they're living right now, the mobile home park where they live, which is
Canadá.
South Canada,
Tropical Garden.
Tropical Garden, mobile home park.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And would you mind staying and doing some more translation if we need it? I think.
I could be here for about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
I have to pick up my daughter.
Okay, so let's do it this way. Is there someone else here that would like to come up and speak in Spanish?
I can interpret
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then we have it covered then. Okay, so I'm just going to go on with the list then.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Applicable question, if I can. To staff the mobile home park that she lives in, is that an ownership project that she could be renting from an owner, or is that strictly a rental project? It's a rental project. Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Rochelle Upton. Is Ms. Upton here?
She conceded her time to me. Yeah.
To whom?
Chris Barrows. I apologize. We didn't fill him out properly, I guess.
Did you fill out a slip?
Yes.
And your name is?
Chris Barrows. I did it hurriedly, so it's probably a bit sloppy. I apologize.
You did it for what?
Hurriedly, in a hurry. It may be sloppy. We turned them in together, Rochelle and I.
Okay, and is Rochelle here?
I am here.
Okay, I can't find your slip, and we'd like it for the record, but I do have a blank one. So perhaps, come on up. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, we'll give you 4 minutes, and then and Rochelle has yielded her time to you. Okay, so I've got that clear. And so I'm going to give you 4 minutes, but then after you speak, would you mind taking this from Ms. Vaughn and filling it out for the record? Thank you. And if I find it and I call your name again, I apologize. Okay, let me get the clock set here.
All right.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you for having this special meeting and all the work that you've done. My name is Crystal Barrows, and I'm a resident of the Flamingo Mobile Home Park, the one that has the most spaces, the 769 units that could be converted to double that. And we would like to implore you deeply to for the removal of the AUD overlay from the Flamingo Mobile Home Park and the other mobile home parks in the area. And I had a question about the presentation, which may need to be answered at a different time, but it sounded almost like only the parking portion of the AUD was going to be removed. Anyway, I'll get clarification on that later. But we are already a source of one of the city's few sources of low-income senior, a lot of disabled in our community, and many of us have been there, myself and two of my neighbors, since the 1960s. And we've recently had a change of ownership in the mobile home park. So we've been at city council meetings and zoning meetings for the last 3 years, trying to get the the AUD removed and the change in the conversion ordinance, as well as some other changes, hopefully getting the zoning changed to strictly mobile home, if that was possible. That's something that has happened historically. We were zoned as a trailer park. And if we could remain zoned as a mobile home park, then we wouldn't be as much in fear of losing our homes. In the 50 years that we've been there, our property was family owned. It just went on the market a couple years ago, and so all of us old people there are worried. We're having anxiety. We're having, everything from minor concerns to stomach upsets and doctor visits and anxiety-related disorders are showing up in our community. So if there's anything that you folks can do to help us keep our homes, we would like to ask you for that. And that removal of the AUD is a big one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So you'll fill that out?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Then we'll have that on the record. I appreciate that. Okay, so now we are going to Francisca Cadillo. She here, and do you want an interpreter? Yes. Okay, can someone come and, yes, that's great. Thank you very much for doing this. That's very helpful. And I'm going to go down to 2 minutes. So if you can perhaps speak to her and then you put the mic up so we can all hear you, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Francisca Caudillo.
Good afternoon, my name is Francisca Caudillo.
Yo estoy aquí por lo de Tropical Garden.
I am here because of Tropical Gardens.
Ya tenemos muchos años de estar ahí, ¿verdad? Viviendo. Estamos contentos. Es un lugar agradable.
We have many years living there. We enjoy living there and we are happy there.
Nada más lo que quisiéramos que nos arreglaran las cosas, ¿verdad? El lugar, porque yo en el tiempo que tengo no me han hecho gran cosa.
The only thing we really want is for things to be fixed, because while the time that we have been there, nothing has been fixed.
Mi esposo tuvo que ponerle piso nuevo, lo pintó.
My husband had to put new flooring, had to paint it.
Tuvimos un problema de animales que se nos metieron.
We had a problem with animals there.
Lo hemos reportado varias veces.
We've reported it many times.
No nos han arreglado nada. Mi esposo tuvo que tapar unos hoyos.
No one has fixed us anything. We've had to patch up a lot of holes.
Ahorita hay muchas termitas.
Right now we have a lot of termites.
Y pues se les reporta las cosas y nunca hacen el arreglo que tienen que hacer.
And we report it and no one has fixed anything.
Y sí, cuando es día de renta, nosotros tenemos que, ¿cómo se dice? Pagar la renta.
And of course, when the time it comes to pay rent, we always have to pay.
Okay, thank you very much. If you would mind translating for her that we're at this is a hearing not actually on how the property is run or how to fix things, but it's more about land use issues and whether it should be removed from a specific housing program, so in the city. And I would suggest that she yeah, and perhaps if you could say that for everybody, so everybody knows that this is not really the hearing to complain about tenant, renter relationships and what's going on with properties.
Chair
yes.
Liscombe, also, if you wouldn't mind, the Housing and Community Development Department of the state has a complaint line on the website, and I'd be happy to give anyone that website. That is where you can go directly to the state, and they will help you with these issues.
Okay. Would you mind telling everybody that same thing? So if anyone else is here to speak about the condition of their property, they know that they could talk to Ms. Metzger after the hearing, and you could go to the Housing and Community Development website, which is a state website, and get all the information you need on how to deal with these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to do it right now or okay?
Yes, thank you.
Entonces, lo que les quieren decir es de que esta reunión no es para quejas de inquilinos. Están hablando sobre cómo van a usar la tierra y cómo usar pues las parcelas que tienen y cómo van a diseñar eso. El futuro, exactamente. Y le están diciendo que pueden ir a ¿en cuánto tiempo? They're asking in how much time. Like, in how much time are these zoning developments going to happen? Or how the land is going to be used? You don't know?
How I'm not following the question. I'm not.
Madam Chair, I think the question that came from the audience is, under what threats do we currently know about some of these potentially being converted, right? And I'm not aware of any specific, as staff aware, okay, there's no specific threat that we're aware of any of these parks being converted right now.
Right.
And maybe some of the people in the audience, I feel like, maybe have been misled about the purpose of the hearing. So I appreciate, Madam Chair, you clarifying that.
Right,
And the
okay. So
translator,
if
too.
you would also let the audience know that we're not aware of any threats of conversion of mobile homes to other uses, and we're not aware that anyone here is going to lose their home or anything else. What this is about is actually to reform one of our ordinances in the city to actually help, perhaps help these people keep their homes by removing some incentives that developers might have.
Okay. I think they got it.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to keep going here. Adam Medina? He left? Okay. Oh, boy. Oh, this is Anna Marie Gott. Boy, that was, okay. So I'm going to, you have, and is...
I should have 6 minutes in total. Jim, as well as Hector.
As well as who?
Hector. Is his slip maybe up here? Gutierrez?
No, Hector Gutierrez is right here. Okay. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. I wanted to read something that Allied Neighborhood wrote more than a year ago that actually should have been, I really do believe, taken into consideration when you saw that chart earlier. We voted unanimously, by the way, to support Flamingo Neighborhood Association, which is part of our neighborhood association, to make sure that the AUD overlay was removed from the park. One of the problems that we actually saw was that the chart on the map in the staff report then would have been more informative if instead of using the information on just parcel size, the chart showed the net buildable area. The footnote on the chart specifically stated that it assumed no environmental constraints, and we thought that actually putting forth both numbers without knowing what the constraints were misleading. So right now we see a huge total of a supposed net loss, but that net loss may not be as big as what everyone is thinking it is because of the constraints of the actual piece of property. I was here in the ordinance meeting about a month ago, and one of the things that I think that we actually are not really looking at is the fact that this right now is the most affordable housing in the entire city of Santa Barbara. And if we lose that to any development, that will actually be forcing our elderly and lower income earners out of the city permanently because they are not going to find another place in Santa Barbara to live. And many of these people have family members that are here. Where will they go? Will everyone be uprooted? That is something that you really need to think about. Instead of even just looking at removing the AUD overlay, we should be talking about making these permanently into mobile home parks. You just actually, over the summer, had the local coastal plan that actually was finally approved by City Council. While it may not be approved at the Coastal Commission yet, we increased the number of housing units there. Wouldn't that offset the number of housing units that you think you might actually lose here? That's something you haven't taken into consideration because that was all over the Funk Zone and over into the Mesa. That was a substantial number of increasing the density on the other side of the freeway. It should surely offset anything here at the mobile park level. If we actually, instead of just removing the AUD overlay, we actually converted these into permanent use as mobile home parks, which is what we should be doing. Instead of worrying about a future development and actually how many condominiums or one bedrooms that we can put on, a unit, an acre of housing or a half an acre, we should be worrying about preserving the lowest cost housing we have in the city. Because as we know, anything that is built there, anything is going to push these people out of Santa Barbara, and it will be a higher cost housing. Right now, we already know the AUD is a failure. It is a failure because people didn't dot their I's, they didn't cross their T's, and the people who said that they wanted the AUD to work the most, the people that said that they were fighting the most for people of lower income, the mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, she said, screw you in February, and punted this decision regarding the AUD impact fees and the inclusionary housing until a date uncertain. So we have hundreds of housing units that will get their vested rights. They will never pay a penny in impact fees. Not one unit of housing will be developed for lower income earners. Everything will be at market rate. And for every 100 units of housing that we will develop, we will need 25 or more lower income units. And we shouldn't even be talking about that right now, but we are because it was punted. And you guys still haven't even had the bulk of the work brought to you. Instead, we're looking at this overlay right now today, which is great. Everyone wants it off. But the question that you really need to look at is not only, yes, do we want the overlay removed, but what else can we do to preserve the lowest cost housing in Santa Barbara? Because once it's gone, it will never come back, and every single person in these parks will not be here anymore. And their families, who they probably have nearby, will probably also not be here. So you're not talking about just the 70 people at the Flamingo or
Could you wind up, please?
the 50 so people already at Tropicana or anywhere else. We're talking about a far greater number of people that you are going to need to worry about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Would you come up here, please, because you were so kind to interpret, and I know you want to speak, right?
I just explained to them that I gotta leave. I had to pick up my daughter. She's waiting.
Right, I know. And what's your name, please?
My name's Ana Rico.
Okay, I've got you here, and
Thank you.
Please go.
I have a few questions for you guys. You mentioned 11 meetings before this whole planning that you guys are doing. I'd never heard of them. Where's the Spanish information? I haven't seen it. The only thing I've gotten in the mail was a little orange information saying that this is what's going to be talked about today. Other than that, I have not heard anything about this, nor my manager or the owner of the park where I live, which is Green Mobile Home Park, never mentioned it to me. Another thing is, you mentioned that if we have any concerns, go to housing. I have, and this is what they said. Go to the 636 Guardian Street. I went, and they said, this is not my problem because this is the state. We have no regulation over it. Go talk to them.
Talk to us. Yeah, that's good.
So, I mean, I want to see if they could outreach more to us because I read it and I can understand it, but the wording, I don't understand what they're saying. It's very confusing. A lot of the people that live in my mobile home park, Spanish speakers, which means that now my job is to go and inform them, but it's their job to do it, not mine. I'm here because I can read it and I can understand it. It's the only reason why I'm here. And I've only gotten one notice. Nothing of 11 meetings that I know of at all. And the plan sounds really cool and everything under their eyes, but they have not asked how we feel about it or what do we need from it. They're talking about parking. They have no idea what it is like to park where we live. They don't live there. We do. So I would appreciate if they would make a workshop, like they said that they don't want to do it, in the mobile home parks. Not here, not the Guardian Street, but actually at the mobile home parks so that people that actually live there can hear what they're saying, but have someone who could translate for these people. Because I could do it, but there's certain wording that it's not the same thing. It's more logistic, and I can't do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rico, and thank you for translating. And I will say, this is really the first meeting on this subject. So this is something that we do here, and we make a recommendation to City Council, and then there's an opportunity to speak to this issue at City Council. But we're not looking to alter anything that exists as it is now.
I understand
Okay,
that. I mean,
thank you.
I get the whole information, but there's some wordings that, like sections
yeah.
in 3408. I mean,
It's too
that-
it's too technical.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. I understand
Thank
that, and
you.
I think you conveyed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next speaker is Jumalama Daka. Ms. Jumalama Daka. Did I say that right?
Yeah, and whenever there's a snicker, I know it's me.
Good
afternoon.
It wasn't that. I'm just trying to get in all the syllables, and correct me if I did not pronounce it correctly.
That's okay.
Welcome.
My name is Vijaya Jamala Madaka, and I'm Vice President of Program and Advocacy for the League of Women Voters. And we have submitted a letter, and I just wanted to read what we've said. The League supports this proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance to remove mobile home parks existing as of November today from receiving AUD project incentives in order to preserve existing more affordable housing stock, which we sorely need in Santa Barbara, as we know. And so and though there may be more housing units through the AUD program, but mobile home parks are a housing resource that once lost will not be replaced, as we know. So we've seen that the AUD projects, we've already submitted our protest against some of those AUD incentives that and the projects that are not truly affordable. And so these existing mobile home parks, as we heard, are much more affordable and should not be messed with. So the League has reviewed the language and addressing these 6 existing mobile home parks in the average unit density incentive program and urges the Planning Commission to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council preserving this affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Okay. Eva Angelina Galinda. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. I mean,
it's all right.
I live at 214 South Canada Street at the Tropical Mobile Home, and we just recently moved there, and we have 2 cars, and I know that AUD wants to take, I'm not sure how to say it, but we park 1 car outside, and I know a lot of my neighbors have 2 cars. One gets parked inside, one stays outdoors, out in the street. And if we have to park our cars outside, we have to park it all the way around the block, or we have to find somewhere else to park our cars. And it's like 3 blocks down. And I don't think it's fair for us to walk 3 blocks down and then park our cars. And we, like they say, our neighbors that they just spoke, there's a lot of fixing that needs to be done there. And I know this is only, like you said before, recommendations, because we're only doing, going through this. But when it comes out, we need to step up and talk for our next upcoming meeting on this.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're not here to alter your current parking situation, okay?
No, I know.
I did mention the Housing and Community Development. It's a state website, and if you do have tenant complaints, you can go there. It would be something hcd.ca.gov. Yeah, I think. But do look for that, and if you have any trouble with that, you could give staff a call, community development a call, Ms. DeBusk or Ms. Metzger, who's actually gave the staff report, and they would help you out with that on where you can go for any complaints.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to let everyone know, we were going to try to put it up on the screen, but we're having technical issues. But I wrote down the website. It's right at that little table there if they want to go copy it down.
Okay, great. So if you do, is it at the table with the podium?
The overhead projector, we were going to try to put it up.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. I'd appreciate that. I called Gloria Guest before, and no one came forward. Gloria Guest?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to speak?
No, it's okay because
You okay? Okay. You're not speaking now. Did I miss anyone? Is everyone spoken that wants to speak? Okay. With that, then, thank you all very much for coming, and I'm going to close public comment, and we're going to move it back to the commission for any additional questions and deliberations. Thank you. We can start with just, we have additional, I just closed public comment. But we have two more speakers? Okay. Did these come in after I closed public comment? Okay. Okay, so this was an oversight then. Okay, so I'm going to reopen public comment. Jose Guerrero? Here? He left. Oh. Okay, and Mario Sandoval? He's gone too? Okay. Okay, so these people aren't here. Okay. So public comment is now officially closed. Okay, so we're back to the commission. I'll start with any additional questions commissioners may have, and then we can go into deliberations. I don't see any lights on. Anyone have any questions? Okay, let's just go for it then. Yes, Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first, it's a little heartbreaking to see people hesitant to come up here and speak, and I think it's a lesson learned perhaps for us collectively on this type of item that we should have been better prepared for the language barrier. It's frustrating as hell to recognize that I understood absolutely nothing of the Spanish speaking and had to rely on somebody else to interpret that and hope that the interpretation was good. But I think it's a definite oversight on our part that the people in the room, the demographic in the room, were going to be non-English first language speakers, and we weren't prepared for that. So, lesson learned, I hope. I think it's just as important here as it is up the ladder at council to be prepared and ready for that. I will definitely, I definitely will support this, and I'd actually like to just start it off with a motion because I have a particular motion in mind, but I'd make the motion to support the staff recommendation for a positive recommendation to council, and I'd also like to phrase that motion at the same time with language to encourage City Council to protect mobile home parks to the greatest legal extent possible as an essential low-income housing component of Santa Barbara. So,
second.
Thank you.
Who seconded that?
Mr. Thompson.
Okay, thank you.
So it's clear to me that we've got several fingers in a dike right now of trying to fix this problem, and this is only one. This just addresses somebody being able to use the parking incentive to move forward on taking this type of housing stock out of the city. And I'm hopeful that the other accompanying processes that are going forward on what Mr. Vincent referred to will move along as quickly as possible. And so I see my language in the motion as hopefully making that statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jordan. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Schwartz, you were next.
Yes, discussion, Madam Chair?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. I will be, first of all, supporting the motion, but I'd like to make some comments if I could. I had a concern, and you heard this in one of my questions, and now I'm going to follow up to underscore both my concern and my request to Council as this and all of the other remaining AUD proposed amendments go to Council. And that is, if possible, to delay the December 4th hearing at Council or immediately schedule additional public outreach, evening sessions with Spanish language translation. And I feel very strongly about this. I really don't see how, with constrained staff resources, which we heard from Ms. Metzger, is one of the reasons on the short list of why Phase 2 AUD amendments are going back to Council first before returning to Planning Commission. The community, there's still confusion. There are emotions are running high, in some cases without solid factual information. In other cases, there may be factual information, but we need to bring the community together. Some of you have heard me say this before. And I think now is absolutely the time to robustly engage the community before the city decision makers spend more of their time and staff resources and the community's time. So I wanted to start with that. Then I would also like to comment on some of what we've heard from the members of the community talk about the conditions of their housing, the substandard, poor conditions. I'd like to make a few remarks. In many areas of our city, we have very old, deteriorating housing stock conditions. Some of it is just due to how old the housing is. As it gets older, it's more and more difficult and more costly for any property owner to maintain. But we also have irresponsible property owners who do not maintain properties. I'm going to say that this is one of those challenges where we have the state of California overseeing and responsible for the properties of mobile home parks. We have some authority in the city. I'm not going to try to describe that. Our city attorney could do that if necessary. But for only those properties where we have full enforcement authority on building standards, human habitability, unfortunately, we don't have the full authority to help many of you as I would like to be able to help you. So I feel for you, and I'm sorry if you have tried to seek remedies from the state and if you have not been able to do so. But if you have not, now you have some additional information, and I hope there will be improvements in your living condition. What we are trying to do, I'll speak for myself, what I am trying to do as a planning commissioner and a policy maker and a city decision maker over the months to come, including next year, will design policies, revise policies to encourage new housing, new rental housing that will be more accessible and more affordable. Not to everybody. That's idealistic, and it's not going to happen. So all we can do is do our best and try to create policies that encourage that. The City Council will also have a lot to say about that very soon.
And I want to suggest to staff, as you prepare to go back to City Council with this at whatever date, is in addition to a standalone slide for parking requirements, which you have today, 2 of the other areas or subjects pertaining to development standards and incentives that you have in the staff report but are not in standalone slides pertain to reduced setbacks and reduced open yard requirements. So I would just like to leave a thought with staff that perhaps you could also devise standalone slides, separate slides, so that the council can also be very clear on what those areas look like in terms of the base zoning versus AUD and their considerations. And then lastly, I'll just leave a note to staff or a word to staff. I'm not sure how, perhaps this is a larger discussion both among staff and perhaps at some lunch meeting for Planning Commission, to figure out a way to translate legal language, regulatory language, policy language in our presentations and in our communication with the public that makes it more understandable. I know it's difficult. Unless you're very involved with laws and regulations and policy, this is difficult to understand. Difficult to understand what the words mean, how it affects your lives. I can appreciate that. So I think we have a responsibility to redouble our efforts to try to do a better job. I don't know what our role could be, what my role could be, but I want to try to assist. But I think staff has heard today that that's important to the community, and I'm sure they will take that back and also try their best to figure out how to prepare the words, lay out the words and the terminology in a way that perhaps makes it easier for members of the community to understand the decisions that we're making, the considerations that we have, and so forth. So thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I will be supporting the motion that Commissioner Jordan made and seconded by Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwartz. Commissioner Campanella, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will also be supporting the staff recommendation. I think I don't see the intent of the AUD program being displacement of lower income people. I think that's just a very bad sign and also could really be a total negative on the program in itself. To the extent we're talking about here, which is a sizable extent, that it could affect mobile home parks. I think the whether or not the AUD program appears to give some incentives, and I was questioning that before. I think the perception that it could may be as something we don't want to see, even if there was actuality. The perception that somebody would go forth with an application based upon some assumptions that they could have a better deal. I don't think that's something we should be supporting at this point, and it should be precluded by not allowing even the thought of doing it on a mobile home park. I'm sure that staff and our attorney's office will make sure we're not violating Subdivision Map Act or anything else, and there's probably a lot of regulations that protect mobile home parks that we don't know about at this meeting because we're really focusing on one item. But I'm sure a lot of that will come out at City Council, both from the state protections as well as local ordinances. But again, I think taking the AUD off, recommending that, takes away any perception that something could be done to encourage another use on the property. And I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Campanella. Commissioner Higgins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll support the motion and just say it's too bad that but thank you for coming today. We don't often get a lot of people coming to our hearings, and I appreciate that you're here, but you must have been misinformed about what we were doing today. That's for another meeting, and I won't look to staff for not having the resources to put out better or more understandable public notices, but as a city, we clearly need to do that. And if you were misinformed, it's not their fault. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. I don't see any other lights on. I will also be supporting the motion. I thought it was quite thoughtful, particularly the addition. I do have to say, I think we've got to find a better way, as Commissioner Schwartz said, to notify people. So we're basically land use commission, and we're dealing with a lot of times very dry and boring topics to most people. But when I see people come up here and they're afraid that their parking is going to be taken away from them, we have a disconnect, and we need to fix that. So I'm hoping that there's a way to do that so that we're not getting concerned folks here that we're trying to change their lives, because we're not here to do that. It's actually the opposite today. So at any rate, I do hope that we do find a better way to notify renters and owners of these land use issues when they come before the commission, that really identify them for what they are, and take away the concern or the panic that some people have. And I do want to say, I hope, did we get the HCD website up, or is it just is there a piece of paper we can put somewhere that...
Madam Chair, yeah, so the piece of paper is over there, but for some reason our overhead projector is not working.
Okay.
So after the meeting, I'm also happy to show everyone on the screen. We can just keep that on.
So if anyone wants to see Ms. Metzger after the meeting, please do so. Thank you for volunteering your time to do that, and we could get that information out to you. I want to commend staff. I think this was very well written. I think that the housing policies that you identified totally support your recommendation, and I will be supporting it. So I don't see any other lights on. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Thank you very much. We really we don't often get a lot of thanks either. That's great. Yeah, that's the extra slip that Ms. Vaughn needs. Yeah. Thank you so much for filling that out. And thanks again. Okay, we're on to administrative agenda item number 4. 4A, committee and liaison reports. A1, a staff hearing officer liaison report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing too unusual, but we did have one large family daycare performance standard permit that was approved last week. That was the only anomaly. Everything else.
Excuse me, if we're still in the middle of a meeting. If you could take your comments outside, I'd greatly appreciate it. If you can take your comments outside the council chambers, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So
I'm
the
sorry,
other
Commissioner Higgins. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, there was a performance standard permit for a large family daycare, which was an unusual item, but it was approved, and everything else has been standard issue interior mods and lot area mods.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so other committee and liaison reports from my other fellow commissioners. Commissioner Lodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday's meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission, that was October 31st. The first item was to set a hearing to consider landmark designation for Trinity Episcopal Church at the corner of Mitchell-Torrena and State. It's currently a structure of merit, but they're looking at making that a landmark. The only other big project that was before them was 222 East Cannon Perdido. That's behind where Panino's is on Cannon Perdido and across from the Research Center for the Trust for Historic Preservation. There's currently there's a commercial building in the back and a parking lot in front. And this is a project where they'll be putting an AUD incentive project on the site, on that parking lot, and of course they'll be maintaining the required parking for the commercial structure. And it was before them for concept review comments only. It is a project that will be coming to the Planning Commission.
How many units, Commissioner Lodge?
It
approximately?
It is in a commercial high residential, 28 to 36 dwelling units to the acre. If they did not give how many there will be, it is 8 new one-bedroom units ranging in size from 955 to 1,162 square feet. That's fairly large average size. The big issue over which there are other items relating to reports and analyses is about the foundation of the exterior defense wall for the Presidio is on the property. And so in discussion of, they of course want it as far back from the commissioners want it as far back, the project as far back from those remnants as possible. So that's one of the main issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lodge. I don't see any other lights. I do have a couple reports here. Commissioner Schwartz and I attended the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan meeting last week, October 23rd. We received an update on the vulnerability assessment and economic analysis. We also received a plan for public outreach, which is going to be in November and December. A press release will be issued, and the website goes live on November 26th. And it will have interactive hazard maps, draft vulnerability assessment study that includes information on not only the types of impacts, but information on the adaptation strategies that the plan will evaluate for those impacts. That's part of our job as the subcommittee. And a public meeting is planned for December 5th, and stakeholder meetings will be held in November and December. They're now scheduled for November 26th and December 10th. So stay tuned for the firm dates for all that when that goes live. And the subcommittee also reviewed and gave input to staff on the draft guiding principles for adaptation. So that's where we are on that. On the 24th of October, Commissioner Lodge and I attended the semi-annual chair and vice chair meeting, and we heard about the work of the other boards and commissions, which was, it's always an interesting session. Parks and Recreation Commission had their regular meeting also on the 24th, and they received a report on site selection alternatives for the new police station. Obviously, if you don't know, Louise Lowry Davis Center, Lawn Bowls, and the Teen Center Complex is one of the sites, and the Coda Street parking lot is the other. And that item will be coming to the Planning Commission for informational purposes next week on November 8th. And then yesterday I attended the Citizens Oversight Committee meeting, and I'm only mentioning this if people are interested in Measure C and your sales tax money. We reviewed the work proposed and in progress on Measure C, and we also received police station site selection update. And then we received a tour of the Measure C website. So if you're interested in Measure C, the sales tax increase that went into effect and how those dollars are being spent on infrastructure, the Measure C site is full of information and on all sorts of different levels. It's a great addition to the city's website. So I encourage you all to take a look at that. And that's all I have. And I don't see any other lights, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.